Hey there, I am going to do a quick video here on Give a Little Bit by Supertramp, and really got into this band when I was in high school for a period of time. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I've not seen a very detailed description on this song, and I've also not seen a discussion around the tuning of this song. So I'm going to preface this right off the bat that for whatever reason, the guitar on the original is not tuned to A440. It's up probably about, I'd say maybe 10 hertz at the most. Maybe it's at 450. But my guitar right now is tuned to how it is on the record or on the CD, however you want to refer to it. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you the tuning per my guitar. Again, this is not in A440. This song here is how E is tuned. Here's A. There's D. Here's G. B, and high E. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because if you want to go play with the actual recording, you're going to have to slightly retune your guitar, otherwise you're not going to be in tune. I have seen some tabs and interpretations of this and say you got to put a capo on the first fret, but it is not a whole half step up. It's a cross between being a half step and being a half step down from a half step up. Does that make sense? In other words, this is one of those things where, I don't know if you ever listened to this song and picked up your guitar and tried to play with it, but you're just out of tune and you're like, why? What the heck's going on? This is why, okay? Some artists did this in the past, and some artists just, hey, I'm tuned up, let's go for it. You were tuned to yourself, and that's just the way it is. I don't think he does that continually. Maybe he does, but I know I've spent a bit of time explaining this. Oh, by the way, heading off to a wedding, that's why I'm dressed up. Isn't that funny? Okay. But what I want to do here is I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about the rhythms and just certain things about how this song is played. And I'll include the chords like I do, but the intro is A7 to D, A7 to D, then G to A7, G to A7, and then it goes on a G to a D when he starts his lyrics. And again, during that time, it's this back and forth between A7 to D, A7 to D, G to A7, G to A7. So his basic rhythm is now, I want to just state this specifically too. When he plays the G, he plays this version, which I have up here, but it does not have this, what they call a G5. That's too bright for this song. He does this, just a traditional G. And then towards the end, the last two lines of the verse, it goes B minor, E sus4 E, G, B minor variation, back to A7. And the reason I bring that up is that his original B minor, where there's so much we need to share, is this. He actually does it with a thumb and this. So he's kind of killing more, but so what I just did is I did a traditional B minor with an E7 sus4 to an E. Then he goes to the G. And now this next variation of B minor is this. So it's not the traditional B minor. He's got a different voicing going here. And then he goes back to the A7. Okay, so there's so much need to share. Then he does this voicing of this B minor variation we talked about. So what I just did is I went from this A7 to this B minor variation, and I'll figure out what exactly I would call it, if I would call it an actual chord, because it's a suspension with B minor as kind of the core of it. And then up here, and so what I'm doing here is a voicing that I would basically say is another voicing of an A7. Okay? And he does that in between going from that voicing to another A7. And when he goes to the A7 traditionally, he jumps his rhythm to get back into the rhythm of give a little bit verse. So if I were to do that, there's so much that we need to share. Notice how I went. That's the kickstart back into give a little bit. Okay, another verse goes through that B minor, E7 sus4, goes through the E, goes to the G, B minor variation again, back to the A7. Again, does this another give a little bit, and then he goes into this breakdown where the solo saxophone comes into play. And what he does with that is he does the same thing I just showed you with that intermediate bridge from verse to verse. But when he gets to this now, he gets into this extra voicing of, which is up on the 7th fret, okay? So if I were to look at that, I would say it's some sort of a right off the cuff E7. So let's call it that for now, and then I'll spell it out as I put up the chord diagrams in here. I'm just winging this right now because I got a couple minutes before I head off to this wedding. I thought I'd throw this together. Okay, so in between, when he goes to the sax solo, he's got this, now there's so much, now there's time that we need to share. E7 sus4, G, so find yourself, we're on our way back home. To a C, here we go. 3 times, right? And then he gets into this other riff, which sets up this next part. So that's a D coming all the way up with the same shape to the 7th and 8th. Coming back here, this is actually an A phrase. This is from set 1 actually of the chord shapes that I talk about in volume 2. And then that's a G back to a D. And then he has this kind of a C suspension to a G high voicing back to a D. And he does that 4 times. And then he does riff 2 twice. And again, this is happening as a setup as well as when the sax is playing. So if I were to do that 4 times, after I get done doing it 4 times, he does riff 2 one more, or actually 2 more times. And I'm going to do a side note real quick here. This spot where he does this, there's one other thing I'm going to throw out that you could do that I think sounds really cool, and I don't know if he does this, but I come up here for an A here using the D shape, right? So I do that from this point. This is the G, just so I do an A here, another A. So I do a D here, D shape here for a G, an A for with a D shape, another A. And I like how that sounds because I think it gets more of an A here and an A here. But if I've seen most of his versions and he does this. Okay, I'm just throwing something out. I kind of like this. I think it sounds fun, more fun to play. Not taken away from the original. That's just my 2 cents on that. Okay, and then after he does that riff, that second riff again, which is this. Then he goes into this. This is a C9, E minor 7. Okay, so what I just did there is I went from this C9 to this E minor 7, back to the C9, E minor 7, and then I came up here for this, I would call it again, a type of an A7, all right? Because this would be my flat 7 if I did. Here's an A, here's an A7, here's my flat 7. Okay, all right. So again, I'm kind of riffing through this really quick, but I wanted to give you the chord shapes that he uses in his voicings, because I think some of this stuff is missed when you look at people saying, this is how he does it. And again, the tuning is huge. If you want to get the tuning to play along with the song, you really do have to tune it up a little bit. So at the end, he goes, come a long way, such a long ride, come a long way, sing it tonight. Again, I'm not going to sing this because this guy's a alto and I'm a baritone. So he goes, we'll just do a lead into that. So. So that's the end of the song. And that's, again, doing that D, doing the D shape up here, which is a G chord, then doing an A, which I call this a partial F shape, and another partial F as a G, back to the D, and then all the way up to the 14th and the 15th fret for an octave of the D. Okay? So as compressed as I can make it, that is Supertramp's Give a Little Bit. I think is a lot of fun. Once you get the rhythms down on this, just be mindful of going from the intro of the verses and or getting into the chorus to remember he's got that kickstart of that A7 to get back into the rhythm, right? So he's got this. So see the man? Lonely eyes, take his hand, you'll be surprised. Here how I took a pause and then deliberately got into that, so that to me is really the takeaways on this song, and I hope that helps with you tackling the song if you choose to. And I'm off to a wedding, and you guys take care out there in YouTube land. See ya.